The healthcare sector is in the grip of a mergers and acquisitions frenzy, and you've played your part with the recent purchase of J&J's heart unit for $2 billion, among other deals. Do you think the deal-making is going to stop anytime soon?
Well, it's been a busy past 2 years for sure, maybe even 3 years on the M&A side around the industry. And it's really a byproduct of companies positioning or repositioning for a lot of the changes that we're seeing in healthcare. And I'm happy to come back to those. But as it relates to Cardinal Health, we have done some important moves that I think help position us on some of the key issues. So for example, we've made a move recently to expand our position in generics, which are 85% of prescriptions in the US. We've made some move in the specialty pharmaceutical area, which helps us access these unique patient populations and connect the biotech and biopharma companies to them. And of course, the acquisition of Cordis for us was really a recognition that a lot is changing in the medical device and procedure world. And it's not just about the devices. And we think that what's happening is that even the payment systems for certain kinds of procedures are going to be changing.
After a few years of more moderate increases, healthcare costs are on the rise again. The US spends more per person on healthcare than virtually anywhere else in the world. What can be done to contain the rising bill?
So first, let me talk about part of what's driving it, which is this incredible explosion of demographics. We have a huge population of 60 and 70-year-olds. That baby boom generation is aging. And we now have 11 million people over the age of 80. And that's going to double over the next 8 or 9 years. So these are incredible forces because that aging population consumes more healthcare products and services. And we have some public health issues that we still wrestle with. So I think the demand is going to be there. Spending 18 or 19 or even 20% of GDP on healthcare is probably an unsustainable model for us as a country. And I do think there are going to be pressures for us to try to manage that more effectively. And it's not just unit cost. I think it's about changing behavior. And a lot of our business is actually about helping the system change those behaviors, whether or not it's the efficiencies that we bring through our distribution systems, standardization, which actually every other industry has really embraced and healthcare has yet to embrace. So standardizing, for example, around consumable products that are used in a hospital setting is important. More care delivered in different settings. So instead of having moderately sick people in the acute care hospitals, we're likely to see really sick people in those hospitals and more care being delivered in the ambulatory and more efficient settings. And in fact, more people being treated in the home. So I do think what we're going to see is systemic changes. It is likely we are going to spend more than other countries, partly because I think the innovation that is being driven out of the US is still quite extraordinary. But I do think the things that we need to do to moderate this really have to do with the way we approach the system. Coordination, right treatment, right caregiver, right sequence, right time, and whether or not we're starting to use innovation to actually build efficiency, not just innovation to create the next new thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's roughly 5 years since the introduction of the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare to some of its detractors.
Yes.
Is it here to stay, and has the industry learned to live with it or even love it?
Right. So I think the question is it here to stay? In its basic form, I believe it is. I think repeal is very difficult, both politically, and there are enough Americans who are benefiting from that. You've seen the reduction in the uninsured rate. So I think there are enough people that feel that they're benefiting from it that it's hard to imagine this going away. I do think it's going to be changed and tweaked over time. It's a major piece of social legislation. I think this happened with Social Security and Medicare, decades ago. So I think we have to think of this as sort of a starting point that probably is going to go through changes. I think most of the industry has adapted to it. That doesn't mean we love every part of it. There are plenty of things that need to be changed. We've struggled with the medical device tax and its underlying byproducts as an example. But I do think that fundamentally the idea of providing more access to more Americans is something that is likely to stay, and I think we'll see it evolve over time. And I think most of the industry has begun to adapt to the things that come from that. I would add this, though. I think Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, needs to be thought in the bigger sense, going back to your earlier question about overall healthcare spending and access. And I think even the things that are happening in the private sector are driving a focus on efficiency and outcomes. And so I do think that we have to think about the public phenomenon, which is the Affordable Care Act, and the private beginning to work somewhat in alignment.
Okay. So, George Barrett, are you prepared to play long short?
I will do my best.
Okay, biotech valuations.
Long.
Obamacare?
A start, a first start.
Biosimilars?
Long.
The branded specialty drug?
I'm going to say long.
And generic drugs?
Long.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.